Think of the people you interact with every day. Would you want to spend a day in a canoe with them? Hi, I'm Nathan Mercero, CEO of Planning Alternatives. We're a disruptive brand in the financial planning space with a point of view that true wealth has nothing to do with money. Growing up in a small town in Canada, I experienced examples of families with money and without. It started me on this journey of understanding wealth and the idea that spending a day in a canoe with someone could be one of the best investments you could make. Join me as I sit down with leaders, entrepreneurs, creatives, rule breakers, and friends to discover their perspective of true wealth. And maybe you'll start to shift yours. I'm excited today because this is our 100th episode of Day in a Canoe. So I wanted to sit down with people who are actively shaping the world that we're in. And I'm joined by Janet the Planet, who's an innovator and experienced designer, Graham Veysey, a producer and community developer, Brian Gast, an executive life coach. Each of you have been in the canoe with me before, and I just want to say thank you for being here today. And we all spent meaningful time together recently on our True Wealth retreat in Palm Springs, California, and we'll dive into more of what's been going on in your life since then and how True Wealth has shown up. So just want to say welcome to everyone.
And congratulations on the 100th episode.
You go, Nathan. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Honored to be part of the celebration.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, let's dive in. When we were in Palm Springs, we spent about 2.5 days together and meaningful conversation, meaningful shared experiences around true wealth. And that's our mission, to help people discover what true wealth means to them. Many times we focus on the currency of money, and that's a very important one. But there's so many other currencies available to all of us outside of the topic of money. And by experiencing those currencies and doing that individually, we all have the opportunity to make up our own definition of true wealth. And then we want to align the financial resources to that end and live a focused and purposeful and fulfilled life. So that's really the true wealth message. I guess I'll just ask each of you, maybe a quick update. What has changed in your life since our time at Palm Springs, and how has true wealth evolved?
We had a wonderful time, and I think that the time was an ability to pause and reflect and to really get into the topic of true wealth. And I was able to do it with my wife, Marika. We'll be celebrating our 17 years of meeting and 11 years of marriage. Today's my son's first birthday. And so we have a 1-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter. And so we were able to escape the normal routines of life and immerse ourselves with such a dynamic group. And it really was inspirational. We were in a place of just great natural beauty. But Nathan, you and your team were able to probe and really get us to reflect and say, what do we want to do in the here and in the now to experience true wealth? And as you said, the variety of currencies. And when Marika and I first met, our conversations have always been around travel and curiosity. And one of the first trips that we made was a road trip, and I said, if I can last 13 days and drive all the way across the country, this one's a keeper. And she thought the same of me. And then about 12 years ago, we had an amazing trip to Rajasthan in India. And it's been a trip that's stuck with us. And we've always talked about going back for a longer period of time and to do so as a family. And it was in Palm Springs with you and the team, where we said, all right, look, we've talked about this. Let's go map a 6-week trip out where we enroll our 5-year-old into school, where we get a resemblance of routine, but feed that curiosity and see if that memory of 12 years ago was overly romanticized, or is this something that we want to do more often? And so that retreat in Palm Springs gave us the courage to plan, and it was really remarkable. We did 6 weeks in Jaipur, and we left more fulfilled, I think stronger as a family, definitely heavier with all the curry and deliciousness that we ate. But it was something that was a very affirming thing to think about things that we wanted to achieve, not in a 5 or 10 or 20 year, but how do we make sure that we experience true wealth now? And so I am grateful that we were able to do it. And I think, we're already scheming for our next deep cultural immersion. And I think, one of the things is, do we do it where it's, a yearly ritual, or do we do it even more often? But we love our community in Cleveland and in the neighborhood that we've helped develop. But we like to think of ourselves as citizens of the world, and to be able to continue to look at all that's out there and appreciate the different cultures is something that we've found is definitely one of the currencies of true wealth.
I love that story. Thanks for sharing. I find it interesting with true wealth. Once you lean into one of those areas of interest, travel, exploration, like you just shared, Graham, it's almost like a match gets lit. There's a flame that starts to burn, and then it leads to something next, and you're opening up and seeing things through a different lens. Janet, I know from your creative design perspective, you're always thinking about what's possible. But what's happened in your life since our time in Palm Springs?
It's been a really interesting period of time, a time of a lot of reflection. I just turned 50 a few weeks ago, and I think these kind of milestones always help you put everything in perspective. But together with that amazingly curated retreat that your team involved us in, just such an expansive time, such inspiring individuals, all of us coming at life in different ways, which was just like, oh wow, that's how you could do life. It's just so fascinating when you get to go deep, not only in other people's kind of philosophies and life perspectives, but really kind of understanding their journeys and what's inspired key decisions, and some of those inspired by wealth, and others inspired by other things, but all kind of adding up to different equations of true wealth at a point in time. Anyhow, since Palm Springs, I think the notion of true wealth has become a lot more lived in for me, and not just not just as a discussion, but it's deep in the conversations that my husband and I are having about what having a rich life actually is. We kind of broadened what wealth means, but strangely, we've never really done much thinking about our financial. While a lot of people are going into kind of like, what does a rich life mean beyond money? We've lived this very kind of like creatively rich life, but have never kind of like anchored in what money means within all that. And so we actually did kind of the outside in version of rich life in the last few months, and have started thinking about our financial life in a really rich way, and been thinking much more about money as this force for good, and how could a year of like prolific creativity fuel this kind of money engine for the long term. So it's just sorry, I apologize if I'm being my ADD self, but it's been a really fascinating time, and we've just been discussing the notion of a rich life much more frequently, and it's part of how we're designing our lives now.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. That's very exciting and enlightening. Security is one of the true wealth currencies that we talk about. And yes, we want to have aspiration, creativity, and all these other possibilities to consider. But at the end of the day, security, which money falls into that currency, is important. We want to feel safe. We want to, make sure that we're wise with the resources that we have. So that just is great affirmation that you're applying true wealth, because it's multidimensional. It's not like we push a button and it's there. It's how we fit all these puzzle pieces together, and then consider the moment in time in our life that we're doing it. Brian, you have come off an amazing trip to Japan. I don't know if that has been the highlight since our time in Palm Springs, but what's your update and your true wealth journey?
Yeah, well, real quick on travel, it is one of the doing things with my family. So I took my son, his partner, my daughter, her husband. So there's six of us, my wife and I. And I thought to myself, if I'm budgeting anything that's out of the ordinary kind of living expenses that I really value to spend money on, it's those experiences. And so I think we could have gone to the mall and I would have had a great time. Yeah, but with that group of people, and they're just so cool to be with, and so there's that. I am a coach that focuses a lot on transitions, and the coach is in a transition. There's no doubt about it. I'm in the thick of one, and was in Palm Springs. I was a banker way back when. There was a transition, ultimately became an entrepreneur, did that for a while, and then there was a transition. And like these are like really clear, like something. Now, here, I just celebrated my 66th birthday, and I can't tell, but part of the transition seems to be more in giving. That started doing some hospice volunteer work. And one of the places that I do this is, well, I just say like where my mom was, it was wall-to-wall carpeting. There were 14 activity directors, and the food was awesome. And I mean, it was just it was a really great. I got assigned 2 patients in what I would call kind of a Medicaid facility. And I have not felt more giggles and meaning in a long time than when I'm in that facility. So what's that about? So there's something though that kicks up of like, oh, well, if I'm transitioning and do a little bit more of that and a little less earned income work, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to that, like, and it actually kind of brings me back to entrepreneurial days where, it was feast and famine, and there were periods where, money was tight and you were trying to get a financing round closed. And so it feels like that. It feels like, oh no, I'm going to never have income ever again, which, people like you, Nathan, remind me like, no, you have these investments. You just haven't applied them that way. So I had this on my birthday conversation with my wife, and I said, I don't know, she's a coach too, so this is dangerous, right? So she asked some really great questions that basically brought me around to the fact that everything that I'm worrying about, crisis in the Middle East, government's got too much debt, AI, all of it is because I'm worried about my abundance or lack thereof. Like I've got a lens to, and Palm Springs kicked that off. It just revealed this lens that when I come at my own situation, circumstances from a place of scarcity, then everything looks scarce. Everything that's about ready to tip or change feels vulnerable. So until I feel abundant, everything else is going to feel scary. And in the course of that transition, then it feels more scary than it does, possibilities, new chapter, all that kind of thing. And I'm not normally a negative person, but there's something in the transition that's kicked up this unconscious definition of true wealth.
I'm curious if you think about true wealth in your life, and if you're having that conversation with someone at a coffee shop or in a canoe talking about true wealth, what would you observe has as a visible outward expression of true wealth has appeared? You shared shared some examples, but also what would disappear? Like as you think about your situation, it's almost like a calibration question. Like if people were observing true wealth, what should they look for more of, and what should they see disappear? Just curious, kind of round robin, what your thoughts might be, whether it's your personal experience or things that you've observed in others.
The burden of, achieving what others are imposing. So I would say like the outside influence. And so being very reflective and whether it's individually or as a family saying, or what's the things that we'll feel fulfilled by, as opposed to what is the perception that we're trying to achieve because of outside factors.
Cultural things that seem to be cheap substitutes for the real thing. Yeah. That's what I notice is people they actually can't satiate their appetite with things because it's not really getting them what they want. The other thing I thought of is about India and Japan. Whenever I'm in some of these other cultures, I'm like, oh my gosh, these people are like, they're so generous with their time. They're generous with, they're like, hey, is that coffee not right? I'll get that, oh, wait, we don't have it, but I can go 2 stores down. I'm like, that's not happen in Denver. So there's something about that I project onto that person that they're feeling abundant and that they feel the definition of true wealth for them is, reaching into that abundance of time and energy. And anyway,
For me, it's kind of leaning more into like gratitude and joy, and as you were saying, Brian, kind of less of those external pressures, and less of those kind of traditionally stimulating or numbing things. Even and my husband and I quit drinking alcohol just over a year ago, just because it felt like a good thing to do. We just wanted that clarity of thought. And I think just feeling a natural energy and joy, and giving more space for gratitude, and all of this has been something. And part of my journey of turning 50, I'm writing 50 letters to friends and mentors who've enriched my life so far. And just practices like that, and carving out time and space to do meaningful things, and dropping away the shoulds, um, a little bit.
I just got flashback to a priest who I went to listen to give a speech, and he has a sign above his desk that no one will should on me today. I think the self-imposed or the external shoulds are it's time to go. One of the things that I see in this true wealth direction is that we've got some cultural shifts that are going on and generational perspectives that are very different around this topic. So if we think about the silent generation, it was all about like stability and institutionalization, and the boomers, and it was let's accumulate and let's do things that haven't been done before. And the Gen Xers are saying, "Hey, I want autonomy and I want freedom," and let's things became more normalized in the culture at that level, such as divorce, as an example. And then millennials wanted more perspective around, hey, let's be honest about topics that we haven't really seen honesty around. And then we're seeing the Gen Zers having a lot of anxiety because they're like, hey, we were raised mostly by Gen Xers that gave us a lot of freedom, but the world's kind of crazy here ever since I've shown up and I've got this thing in my hand called an iPhone or digital device and that's all I know. One of the things that we see is that we want to bridge the divide around these generations as it relates to the topic of money, and introduce how true wealth might show up in meaningful ways. Where have been, Janet, you've actually gave a great example, and maybe just further insight with you and your husband. Where have you found that you've gotten traction, and what's been your approach in trying to navigate a true wealth message, either in your own life or any insights that you might have about some of these generational gaps and how we might approach building a better world together and elevate the true wealth message?
It sounds counterintuitive to the theme of the podcast, which is about much more than money. But I actually feel like that the money piece is actually an essential building block. And so many people don't learn about how powerful that building block is, and just sort of setting things up so that you can set it up and then forget about it, and know that that piece is taken care of, and that you can then approach all the other aspects of a rich life with a sense of peace, and with knowing that there's a piece that's stable, knowing that there's some room for experimentation financially, and kind of building the rich life around that. And it's I feel a little bit silly among my friend group because I have a lot of creative friends and a lot of friends who are younger, and I'm just checking in with them to make sure that their financial piece, that they've thought about it, so that they have that foundation for later, to know that they're seeding that piece of their lives now. So happy to sharing books around and just checking in with people, because a lot of people have parents who've been avoidant on the topic and who haven't gone there. And yeah, You're rubbing off on me. I'm becoming a
Good.
bit of an evangelist.
Excellent. Well, I'll give you the 3-point triangle of what I believe is effectiveness in this whole topic. The first corner of the triangle is a financial plan. So it's looking at things holistically, objectively. What are my goals, my needs, my timeframes, my risk tolerance, all the practical things about taxes and cash flow and insurance and estate planning and investing and retirement and college savings, all the spectrum of the things that we interact with on a daily basis in our life, and building a financial plan that says, this is my roadmap for the future, and finding ways to get support, knowledge, improved literacy on different topics, work with professionals that are knowledgeable, et cetera. And that's our space. That's exactly what we do for clients every day. There's another component on the triangle called our money personality and belief system. I've seen people have phenomenal financial plans, all the numbers checked off, but they didn't believe it. The world might end. They'd catastrophize anything. The stock market could crash. This could happen. That could happen. And they were trapped in that belief system. And so each of us have a money personality, set of a lens, just like our eyeglasses, through which we look at the whole topic of money and life. And so if we know our money personality and we can say, okay, this is who I am, I'm wired this way, that's okay. But here's some things that I might want to evolve and grow or improve. That's the other component. And then the third point on the triangle is true wealth. It is, what does true wealth mean to you? What is the aspiration? What are your unique set of currencies? But it only works with those 3 points of the triangle being connected to one another. So thank you, Janet, for highlighting the importance of a good financial plan and all the points in that chassis.
It's funny, and talking about money is such a, it. I don't know where I grew up with British parents. Refuse to talk about money. I love them very much, but it was just sort of it's not polite to talk about money was kind of what the household I grew up in. And it's actually, people are finding it a relief to just rip the Band-Aid off and just have these conversations about what a rich life is. And it's a deeply philosophical, personal conversation to have. And I actually feel closer to people when we can like share these bigger like philosophies about what living a rich life looks like.
Graham, thoughts from your perspective about this topic?
The
rest-
generational component, and who knows if it's just that I'm too stuck in the situation that I'm in, but I more and more interact, and I think that the group that you were able to convene in Palm Springs were a bunch of folks that you had similar sort of multidisciplinary careers, where it's not a singular trajectory, but something where people have multiple things that they're working on, or multiple things that they're earning against, or with. And I think that from a generational standpoint, I think that that's unique, because you had a generation of our parents that would just have a job and be a company person and spend decades at a singular place. And you've seen that shift both in the traditional workplace, where people will bounce from job to job. But then, Brian, as you were talking about, going from being a banker to an entrepreneur, I think this entrepreneurial culture that we're in is one where somebody will not only bop around to different jobs, but different industries or different interests, or have independent entities that they can in parallel earn against or with. And so I think that that's something where as economists look back at this era, they'll say, okay, there was a shift where people went from that cookie cutter, gray flannel lifestyle, with a fixed number of days off and going into the office, to something that is pretty different. And then I think the other component that is almost on a weekly basis still impacting is the pandemic, and the fact that it is such a major factor in a lot of behaviors that exist today, whether it's in education or business or commerce from a like retail standpoint. The restaurant industries, not recovered. So the pandemic, despite the fact that we're not walking around in masks and standing 6 feet apart from each other and having those debates about people who are vaccinated, I think that the real thing is that the pandemic is still impacting our daily lives, and that residual effect is something that we're still coming out from, and that just is through a wide variety of industries.
It's great insight. Brian, what are your thoughts?
I love the map, the 3-pointed thing, because I think I've lucked out and gotten, imparted that roadmap to my kids. And, because the first leg of it, first quarter was like, there's a lot, this guy's got to learn a lot. They got to learn about insurance and taxes and investing, and some, that's great. That comes naturally. But a lot of people, it's kind of like, wow, this is like, yeah, it's part of adulting, it's like that kind of thing. I think the key for us is as parents anyway, in that relationship, is to be Janet. I like to talk about your own relationship with money and how you got there, and what works and doesn't, what's worked and not worked, and model you experiencing true wealth. Model that, or you struggling to find whatever of the 3 legs are difficult for you. But the generational difference is, I just notice there's still a gap between the old model where, like, I just don't get it. Like, you be grateful for your job, you work your butt off, and you don't complain. It's like, I'm like, that's just like almost like 1980s or 50s or something. Like, young people aren't motivated by those same things. They're motivated by relationships, by meaning, and not all, but the increasing proportion, and certainly after the '08 crash and the pandemic, they're skeptical about this program of you just build a lot of wealth and then you hit 65, retire, and you die. That I'm quoting my son on that one. Oh, that's what we do. And then we put money in our 401k, and then we retire, and then we die. And he's being sarcastic, but he's being truthful about it. I want my life to mean something. And so this subject for that generation, I think, is even more meaningful than it is for ours.
Well, we convened in Palm Springs to explore what might the world look like if it were brimming with true wealth. And that's going to be my final question for you all. From your point of view, what would that look like? We're getting ready to reconvene again, our group later this year, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all in person as well. But what might the world look like if it were brimming with true wealth?
Like, you'd have a lot more people who find fulfillment and happiness, and I think that the challenge right now that we see is just global conflict. But then when you look more at a micro level, you have people who are not thrilled with the direction of their lives or the direction of where this country's going. The lowest approval rating since Carter. And the hope is that you can find community. And I think we found that in our retreat in Palm Springs. And it doesn't have to be people that you live near. It can be a community of people that you get together with on a yearly basis. But I think that if we can have a sense of true wealth that builds on that community camaraderie and the ability to communicate with people who are well-intentioned, and we'd be in a much better spot.
Yeah, and through that community, having that kind of shared learning and sense of expansion and growth. And then, in my world, a world with more true wealth in it is always just filled with prolific creativity, because the wells are full. All the wells are full. And so you can continue to feel incredible creativity.
I guess if true wealth had a direct relationship with feeling valuable as a human, I think the world would be a totally different place. Because when I'm in that settled place, like I say, I'm projecting onto the Indians and the Japanese, this kind of abundant living, when I'm in that place, I'm a better human. I mean, you can get whatever KPIs you want, and I measure. I'm more compassionate and a better human. And it's because I'm not lacking or insecure or vulnerable or jockeying for the, the aisle seat in a overbooked flight. I mean, I'm open, So, and I just think there's then, like our little cadre here, there's little ripples then that go out, to the world.
I think with exploring true wealth, we find our possibility, and it's giving up the things that we might be chasing, whether it's material things, whether it's identity, whether it's, ego-based, whether it's expectations that were given us by parents or our environment. There's a quote floating around, some people are so poor, all they have is money. So when you're thinking beyond the chase and saying, okay, what's possible, that just opens up a whole new perspective, and that perspective needs to be grounded in the practicalities of the real world that we're in, with financial awareness and responsibility and tools and resources. But it's the community that allows us to individually expand into our potential, and that's what I hope is ahead for many people who follow the true wealth path. I'm grateful for all of you. It's a real privilege to spend our time today on the 100th episode. Thanks for contributing to Day in a Canoe, and I look forward to continuing our conversations when we meet up for part 2 of our ongoing true wealth discussions.
Love the conversation, Nathan.
Thank
you
you
so much.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review. To discover what wealth means to you, please take our assessment at planningalt.com.